Close your eyes for a sec. Imagine a country right in Europe's core, a long-standing member of big Western alliances, and then suddenly it starts taking this completely different path. Its gaze shifts east. We're talking, of course, about Hungary, and this geopolitical turn is, well, it's pretty surprising, maybe even huge. Today, we're going to try and unpack why Hungary, a country firmly in the EU, is getting closer to powers like Russia, China, and that BRICS group. Our goal is to figure out the why behind this pivot, look at what it means, and really understand its impact on Europe and, well, the whole global picture. And hey, if these kinds of global power shifts grab your attention like they do ours, and you want to stay informed, definitely subscribe to the Geopolitics Gazette. You won't want to miss our analysis. Okay, so let's start our exploration. Hungary joins the EU in 2004. Big moment, lots of hope. Felt like a real return to the West after the Iron Curtain years. But lately, under Prime Minister Orban, wow, things have shifted. What's really driving this fundamental change?
It's a great question. And looking at the sources, one thing really jumps out: national sovereignty. Under Orban, there's this strong feeling that the EU has, overreached. Yeah. That it's meddling too much in Hungary's internal business.
Like what specifically? Judicial stuff?
Yeah,
media?
Exactly. Judicial independence, media freedom, even education policies. And this isn't just Orban saying it. It seems to genuinely connect with a lot of Hungarians. They feel they're defending traditional values against maybe a too progressive EU agenda. And we see this in the numbers, too. A decade ago, EU support among Hungarians was, around 80%?
Pretty high.
Yeah. Now, it's plummeted down to about 47%.
Wow, that's a massive drop.
It really is. It shows a huge shift in how people there view the EU. Is it still the best partner? Maybe not for many. For Orban's government, it seems like the answer is increasingly no on many fronts.
Okay, so it's not just political spats with Brussels. It's actually pushing Hungary to look elsewhere, to look east.
Precisely. They're not just sitting back. They're actively strategically building ties with Eastern powers. We're seeing new trade deals, deeper connections with China, with Russia, trying to benefit from those growing markets. And a really big example, Hungary was the very first EU nation to join China's Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI.
Right, the BRI. That massive infrastructure project, trillions of dollars, connecting continents, sounds like a huge opportunity for economic growth, for development. Is that the main appeal?
On paper, yes, definitely. It promises a lot, especially for infrastructure, trade routes. But, and this is important, there's nuance here. Joining the BRI also ties you closer to Chinese interests. It can create economic dependencies, which, might actually undermine that sovereignty they value so much.
Ah, okay. So a potential downside to the upside.
Exactly. And we've seen serious Chinese investment already, over $1 billion just in 2022, mostly in transport and energy.
Key sectors.
Very key. Short-term boost, maybe, but it does raise those long-term questions about autonomy.
That makes sense. Dependency is always a risk. Now, what about BRICS? That's another big part of this Eastern focus. Can you remind us what BRICS is exactly and why Hungary is leaning that way?
Sure. BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And it's becoming, a pretty significant counterweight to Western institutions. Hungary seems to view BRICS as this dynamic, growing economic bloc. They see potential there.
Potential for what? Trade? Investment?
Both. And also energy infrastructure, areas crucial for their development. And this isn't just some minor tweak in policy. It reflects a really big shift globally. Think about this. In 2022, the BRICS countries together made up about 31% of global GDP.
31%?
Yeah, actually edging out the G7, which was around 30%.
Wow.
And by 2023, BRICS countries represented something like 44% of the world's population, still holding that 31% GDP share. These numbers show a real rebalancing of economic power happening right now.
That 31% GDP beating the G7, that really hits home. Makes you think about the future economic order. It's not just economics, right? BRICS is building its own institutions, too.
Absolutely. And that's strategically very interesting. They're setting up their own financial systems, like the New Development Banks and Alternative World Bank, or the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, an alternative IMF.
Ah, okay, so parallel structures.
Exactly. For Hungary, connecting with this isn't just about finding new markets. It's about positioning itself inside this emerging economic story, maybe getting some insulation from Western financial pressure, allowing it to follow its own path with fewer strings attached. It's about having options.
Right, strategic options. Clearly, Hungary sees advantages looking east, but as you'd expect, this pivot, these new ties, they've caused some serious friction back west, right? With the EU and NATO. Where are the biggest clashes happening?
Oh, the friction points are pretty clear and quite sharp. Take Russian energy. The EU slapped heavy sanctions on Russia after the Ukraine invasion, but Hungary, they've kept importing Russian gas, a lot of it.
How much?
Around 85% of their gas imports still come from Russia,
Despite the sanctions.
despite the sanctions. The government argues energy security is non-negotiable, a top national priority. But obviously, that directly undermines the EU's effort to cut reliance on Russia and show a united front.
Okay, so energy security versus EU unity, that's a major one. What else?
Well, then there's the blocking of EU military aid to Ukraine. Hungary vetoed significant aid packages. Their reasoning, that it could escalate things and harm Hungary's interests.
Which puts them directly at odds with basically everyone else in NATO and the EU on a critical issue.
Squarely at odds, it created a real bottleneck within the alliance when Ukraine urgently needed support. And then, of course, there was the whole saga with Sweden's NATO membership. Hungary dragged its feet on approving it for a long time.
Yeah, I remember that. Why the delay?
Officially, Orban mentioned national security concerns, but, there was a lot of speculation. Was it Russian influence? Or maybe leverage against Sweden because Sweden had criticized Hungary's
The democratic backsliding. That term keeps coming up.
Exactly. That pattern of concerns about rule of law, media freedom, judiciary, core EU values, that delay definitely strained relationships within NATO, caused a lot of frustration.
So you add it all up, energy, Ukraine aid, NATO expansion delays. It really feels like Hungary is testing the limits, testing the unity of the EU and NATO solidarity. What are the bigger implications here? What does this mean beyond Hungary?
Stepping back, Hungary's realignment is a major challenge, especially for EU unity. It potentially weakens their collective foreign policy voice. Some analysts even talk about a risk of a fracture among members. It really highlights these growing ideological divides within Europe itself.
And for NATO?
For NATO, it raises serious questions about solidarity, about what membership really means in terms of shared values and coordinated action.
What about the economics of it all? Beyond those initial investments, are the long-term gains solid or are there big risks?
It's definitely a mixed bag. Short term, sure, there are benefits. More trade, more investment from outside the EU, those Chinese investments we mentioned, they could add maybe 1–2% to Hungary's GDP growth in 2023. That's significant.
But the long term?
The long-term risks are real. Over-reliance on these new partners, especially ones that might not be very transparent, and potentially getting isolated from EU partners if tensions rise. Think trade barriers, maybe even sanctions down the line. It's a high-stakes gamble, really. Big potential upsides, but also serious potential downsides.
So this whole story isn't just about Hungary, is it? It sounds like a symptom of something bigger.
Absolutely. Hungary's Eastern embrace.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of this broader tectonic shift happening globally. You see emerging economies everywhere looking for alternatives to the traditional Western-led system. Countries like Argentina, Egypt, Iran, they're expressing real interest in joining BRICS.
So it's a trend.
It's definitely a trend. It signals that the game is changing, as they say, and so are the rules. This idea of a multipolar world with power spread out more, it's gaining ground fast. And countries like Hungary are right at the forefront of navigating that shift.
You really can see how these choices made in Budapest ripple outwards, shaping debates about the future of global institutions. It's fascinating, maybe a little unnerving too.
So looking forward, Hungary seems to be at this crucial fork in the road. Can it be a bridge between East and West, like some hope? Or does it risk becoming, isolated within the EU, an outlier? Orban himself says Hungary won't sacrifice its sovereignty. That seems clear. And look, tracking these complex geopolitical moves is vital. If you agree, please think about subscribing to the Geopolitics Gazette. We put a lot of effort into bringing you these insights regularly.
And it leaves us with some really big questions, doesn't it, for everyone to think about. How will the EU handle a member state going down such a different path, especially on core values? Particularly when you see similar Eurosceptic sentiments popping up elsewhere, like in Poland or Italy, according to some polls.
Could it trigger a domino effect?
That's the question. Could Hungary's actions lead to a bigger rethink of EU priorities? Or even more divergence, more fracturing of that unity they've worked so hard to build? It really forces us to consider. As the world changes so rapidly, how does our own understanding of alliances, of global relationships, need to change too?
Those are definitely the crucial questions shaping our future. We hope this exploration gave you a clear perspective on Hungary's complex situation and its global echoes. Thanks for joining us as we examine these powerful forces reshaping our world. And remember, for more essential geopolitical analysis, make sure you're subscribed to the Geopolitics Gazette.